All right, thanks so much for joining. This is our June edition of the Baltimore Admin Group hybrid meeting. My name is Evan. I'm one of the hosts here. Let's say hello to everybody in the room. And I'm very excited to introduce Guy Tawny, who's going to be walking us through his app called Era and all different things you could do with tracking the time as people are working in Salesforce. Guy has also graciously sponsored our event tonight, so extra special thanks to Era for making all of our drinks possible.
Yeah, that would be good if people were drinking before I gave my presentation. It might help. Cool. Evan, I think you're mostly showing my chest right now on Zoom. You got a really good look at my shoulders. Do that. That works too. Cool. Awesome. So I'll go ahead and get started. Everybody can see my screen right now. You should be able to see an Era presentation on Zoom. No, shaking the head on Zoom. I'm not sharing my screen. Good. Here we go. Now you should be able to see my screen. There we go. Awesome. Very good. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you kind of a quick rundown of our agenda for my presentation. This shouldn't take more than 45 minutes, and there's a good chance it'll be less, so we can start eating soon. And please don't hesitate to interrupt me with any questions at any point. That'd be super helpful. I tend to be a little bit of a boring lecturer, so a little audience engagement might make this more fun for everyone. So run through a quick introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about why it's really important to develop a license strategy. We're going to take a little bit of a look at how to identify eligible users, what determines who's an eligible user to be moved from one license to another. And we're going to focus primarily on the case study of kind of enterprise versus platform. But the topics we're going to talk about are relevant to a whole bunch of different Salesforce licenses. We're going to talk a little about Era and where Era fits in this process and helps you develop your license strategy. And then we're going to take a quick look at how to actually update a user license. So I don't think it's something that people do very often, and it's pretty simple, but some tips and tricks on how to do that. So quick introduction. My name's Guy, as Evan said. I'm the founder of Era. I'm the one on the right in that picture. And I've met a lot of you guys before, and I thought it'd be a little bit helpful. I've been up to a lot of different things over the last 8 years or so. And so I thought it'd be helpful to give you a little bit of a kind of timeline of what I've been up to, particularly as it relates to Salesforce. So in 2008, I founded Landvale, which is a Salesforce development company. We've been providing services to our clients, specifically in Salesforce development for, if I can do math, 8 years now, 7 years now. And in the spring of last year, we started building an app called Era. At that time, it was an auto time tracking app. We had this kind of concept around capturing user time in Salesforce and the really interesting data insights that would generate for everybody. And we started developing it. We released a beta to 100 users in the fall of last year. We published that app to the App Exchange in January of this year. And then through that process, we learned a ton. We learned a lot about how valuable the data was that we're generating for all sorts of different value propositions that are out there. But one of the biggest things that we learned is that the most valuable value proposition that we offer is this concept of license auditing. So today, right now, we're actually relaunching Era as a license auditing app. And it's sort of, yeah, there we go. Thank you. Super exciting. And so I want to highlight this to you guys because I think a lot of times in software presentations, there's a lot of wool pulled over the eyes. Mike was just talking about some of the prep that goes on behind the scenes for Dreamforce, and the demos are maybe real, maybe not. This shift to license auditing is a new shift for this product. It's there and it works and it's really powerful, but I'll be really transparent about like, hey, this is built and this is kind of still in process, and how we're signing up customers even despite that. So before we get into the kind of the nitty gritty of license eligibility, everyone's favorite topic, I'm going to do a quick poll. And if we just do just quick raise your hands. I think on Zoom, you should also be able to raise your hands very quickly. I want to try to get a sense of where everybody is in terms of familiarity with this and experience. And so first question, who has users with platform licenses in either their org or an org that they are managing or working in? So 4 in the room, 1 on Zoom, 5 in the room, 1 on Zoom. Okay, so a pretty decent number of people. And then who has users with partner community licenses? Cool. Okay. Awesome. Maybe half. Nobody on Zoom. Half the people in the room. And then last question, a little bit of a different topic. This is a fun one. Feel free to shout it out. What are the most common complaints that you hear about Salesforce?
Jeez, that's a huge question, guys.
We got time. And just Salesforce, just generic Salesforce. What, like, you meet somebody at the bar and they're like, "Oh, I work in Salesforce." And they're like, "Oh my God." And and then fill in the blank. What are some of the common things you hear? Too expensive, too huge, too complicated. I don't know how to use it. Yep. Awesome. Exactly. So we can't solve all of those problems. And we're not trying to solve all those problems, but we are trying to solve the too expensive issue. I do think it's one of the biggest complaints that you hear universally is that Salesforce is really expensive. And I think there's actually a solution in here to make it way less expensive. And so that's really what this is all about. And to do that, it's really important to develop a license strategy. I don't think this is something people think about at all. People, from my experience, go and they buy enterprise licenses. And they assign all their users a bunch of enterprise licenses, and then they accumulate a bunch of add-ons, and they use some of those add-on licenses, and then they buy a managed package and they partially implement that. And there's a bunch of licenses sitting there that are not actually being utilized, and it's just kind of normal. And I think it's part of why everybody thinks Salesforce is so expensive. Salesforce does not provide any tooling to help with this, and there isn't really anybody out there that has a commercially available product to help develop a license strategy. And so why develop a license strategy? Pretty simple. Developing a license strategy will help you save money. And so let's consider, for example, an org with 100 users, 100 enterprise licenses, I should say, and kind of clarify users versus licenses, at $160 per user per month. I know that's retail and nobody's actually paying it, but it keeps it simple for these kind of just high level example. And we are going to do a little bit of math, so just hang on. I taught 7th grade math for 1 year, and I was not good at it, so bear with me. In this example org, this company is spending about $200,000 on their enterprise licenses. They're going to accumulate, let's say, $20,000 a year on add-ons and maybe another $30,000 a year in managed package licenses. There's this concept of shelfware out there. The idea is software that you buy and licenses that just sit on the shelf, never actually getting utilized. 15% of licenses being kind of categorized as shelfware is a pretty conservative estimate. Typically, as enterprises get larger and larger, that number goes up to anywhere up to 40. And then as the organizations get smaller and there's less number of licenses and the contracts are less complicated to administer, the shelfware, the percentage of shelfware licenses that are not actually even assigned tends to go down. But for our purposes, we're going to use a fairly conservative estimate of 15%. That alone, if you were able to unload your shelfware within sales, this 100-person, 100 enterprise license org would reduce your costs from $250,000 to about $210,000. So a meaningful kind of drop in and of itself. Now let's consider your core license assignments. So what licenses are your user, which licenses are your users assigned to? In this org, we took our 100 licenses down to 85 because we found that 15% of them weren't even being used. And now let's kind of insert the assumption that we can actually move 25% of those users off of enterprise onto platform. So instead of paying for 85 enterprise licenses at $2,000 per year per month, $2,000 per user per year, you can move 21 users onto a license that costs $300 per user per year. Okay, so that's a huge change. Okay, And that's per user per year, 300 versus per user per year of 2,000. So if that's possible, the total core license spend in this org after we've eliminated the shelfware goes from 168,000 to 137,000. Yeah, I know this is like you're starting to get a sense of why I was a bad math teacher because, yeah, Jabari.
Shelfware one more time.
Yeah, shelfware. So just licenses that are not actually being used
At all.
Right, like you were shooting for 50 users, but you only have 40 employees.
So, yeah.
Like-
either at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
not allocated, there's not assigned,
yeah, yeah.
I see. Or they're assigned to users that are not active.
Okay.
Not active,
Logging in.
right?
Yeah.
Or they're assigned to users not being used, right? So it could be they're not assigned at all. Could be assigned but not being used, or assigned to like consumed in any sort of way, but not actually being utilized. It's software that you're paying for, but it's just sitting on the shelf.
I see.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
Very basic question. Can you tell me the difference between enterprise and platform?
Definitely. And we're going to get into that.
Okay.
I'm just going to try right now. Let me just set the kind of like the business case and kind of draw out some big picture numbers to just drive home the point that there's a huge amount of money to save by looking at this. And then once you're like really sold that, hey, there's something to pay attention to, I'll show you what it is. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Cool. All right. So shelfware, core license assignments, right? Let's go ahead and combine those two now. So we've got the $40,000 of savings simply by eliminating shelfware. And now we've dropped our core license assignment from, as well down to 137,000. Here we go. This is the piece that I missed as a seventh grade teacher. If I just shown this slide at the beginning, you might have actually made sense. What we're really talking about is in this org, taking our recurring annual license cost, and that's a recurring every single year license cost, which is huge deal to an organization, from 250,000 to 180,000, or 27% less. A massive potential change. So what is a platform license, and how do we figure out who's eligible to reassign to a different type of license? And again, I'm really focusing on enterprise and platform because I think that's the most universally applicable. But there's a bunch of other license assignments in here as well that we can analyze. I think it's really helpful when trying to understand the eligibility criteria of core licenses, enterprise and platform, to put it into two different categories. There's the core license itself, and then the add-on compatibility that might dictate the need for a specific core license. Okay, so if we just look at the core license, a lot of the features are exactly the same for a user who's logging in a platform license with a platform license as an enterprise license. Some of those examples are accounts, contacts, activities, notes and attachments, custom objects, reports and dashboards, and custom apps. Okay, it's a lot of users. There's a lot of users that live in that space, and if that's the space that they live in, there's a good chance they might be eligible for a platform license. Of course, there are features and there's data that you need the enterprise license in order to be able to access, such as cases, leads, opportunities, campaigns, standard apps, very easily replaced. And then if you're the system admin, you have to have an enterprise license. Cool. Awesome. Same kind of like thought process and analysis on the add-on compatibility. It's really important when you're making a decision on user license to look at what add-ons that user is assigned. If that user is assigned inbox or maps or messaging or CRM analytics, they can have a platform license. They are eligible to be moved from an enterprise license to a platform license and still have that add-on license assigned to their user. Of course, there are add-ons that require an enterprise license, right? Like for instance, sales engagement, which used to be high velocity sales, sales dialer, service cloud, voice and revenue intelligence. And when you think about the objects and the intent behind those add-ons, it sort of makes sense, and it goes along with the core CRM functionalities that you see in opportunities and leads and campaigns and things like that. So of course, this is not at all an inclusive list of objects and features in Salesforce. This list goes on for pages and pages and pages. The point of the slide, and the reason I'm showing it to you, is to establish the fact that the question of what license a user is eligible for is very prescribed, and there's a set finite knowable set of rules and criteria, which is what we've been developing, what we've developed, and it's this type of thinking that we're applying in Era. Any questions about that? Because this is an important slide, I think. Okay, cool. So how do we do that? How does Era work? Yeah, please.
For the objects that the enterprise license does not have the checkbox next to, does that mean that they can't even see those records, or just that they can't create or edit or delete those? Is it also at the view level?
Yeah, so it's the data access and then the features that are built on top of those things. So if you're on a platform license, you cannot access any case. You have no CRUD access to cases.
So even viewing at all?
Yep, correct, exactly.
So as if they do not exist.
It's as if they don't exist. And then, you think of like the little niche features that might exist only on opportunities in Salesforce. And like, there's a little, they're kind of derived from that. And, standard apps, if you want to go find the app called Sales, which was in your org when it was set up, and you're on a platform license, you won't see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions about this one? Cool. All right. So
I have a question online. Mine is asking, you are able to see summary data on the records. You can see like total hops won on the account level, but you can't see detailed info.
Makes sense if it's a value that's rolled up onto an account, right? You do have access. I think it's really important to highlight that you have access to accounts and contacts. Those are pretty critical pieces. And so, but yeah, the details on an opportunity you wouldn't have any CRUD access to. Cool. Thank you. All right. So what is Era? So we've got this like really powerful business case in that we can save a ton of money. We have a little bit of a framework around how do we actually access that. And really the framework we looked at was just talking about defining eligibility criteria. There's also this shelfware concept, which is just a little bit easier. It's less complex. It's just what is not being assigned or used. And so what is the role that Era plays in helping develop your license strategy and help your company save a lot of money? First thing we do is we evaluate the metadata, the user data access, and your user license assignments. Okay, so the metadata being what are all of the licenses that exist in your orgs? How many licenses does each of those licenses, and when I say licenses, I'm talking about core licenses, add-ons, and managed packages. User data access is a really tricky concept. It's how do you figure out what records your users are actually looking at? We've solved that. And then your license assignments so that we can do that add-on compatibility analysis. We evaluate all of that and we apply the eligibility criteria that we talked about in order to recommend core license adjustments and quantify your shelfware cost. Two pretty simple outcomes, but really, unique in the Salesforce space. No one's really chasing after this except for Mike. And that's kind of it. Unfortunately, of course, my demo org blew up right before this presentation. So you're gonna have to take me at my word for this, or even better, schedule a demo where I can actually show you the data architecture behind how we're storing this information and everything we're doing to calculate it. Would love to do that. Any questions about this? Yeah.
Can this be implemented before like an implementation or like what stage of the implementation or only
Cool.
when they're live?
Yeah, good question. The timing of this is really interesting because when can you actually realize the value from Era? It's in your renewal, right? So when do you have to buy and install Era? It's with enough time to be able to accumulate meaningful user data access data. It's a terrible sentence. But you need to have it installed for a long enough time where we can observe what records every user is accessing to be able to make a recommendation and say, hey, this is a user that's never accessing those protected objects, leads, cases, and opportunities. Therefore, they are eligible. And that you need to collect that data far enough in advance of your renewal to be able to go into your renewal with that information in hand and ready to kind of make those changes. And better yet, your finance team might love to have that data in advance of preparing their budgets for the following year. So you can say, hey, in 26, when our contract renews in April, we're going to be able to cut our licenses from $250,000 to $180,000. And we can tell you that because we bought Era in June and they have the information they need by November, so that when they're developing the budget for next year. So the timing piece is interesting because we are kind of like fitting into this larger sales cycle of Salesforce. But if you have like a particular renewal schedule or question about that, I'd love to talk about it. Yeah, please.
So do you have an average of how long then? Is 5 months the amount of time that you recommend?
So this is kind of like the relaunch today. All right. So I don't have a long history of customers said like they bought it, this far in advance of the renewal and they had the most success. I think 2 months of user access data is probably sufficient. Like it's to say with nearly 100% confidence that if they never access an opportunity in the last 2 months, they probably never do access opportunities. But then, the longer that you have it running, the more certainty, right? You have it running for a year. After a year, you're like, okay, yeah, we can say with a year percentage of certainty, whatever, that they're never going to access opportunities or leads or any of these protected objects. Yeah, cool. Good question. Thank you.
One question online.
Yeah, please.
Asking, she's 2 months from renewal. Is that enough time to do an analysis for 65 users?
Let's give it a shot. Let's find out. Seriously, it's this is kind of the relaunch of a relatively new product. I'd love to schedule time to talk about it and see. Cool. Any other questions? All right. So this is kind of I'm pretty pumped that actually the demo piece isn't here because I think the educational process piece of this is also like really important and super relevant for us an admin group. And I tried to put together just the really basic nuts and bolts of what does it take, what is the process, what are the recommendations for actually moving a user from one license to another. And it's really simple. You create a custom app if and only if they aren't already using a custom app. And that's literally like the sales app or the service console app that came with your org. If they're already on another app, skip this step. Or if they're already on a custom app, skip this step. Create a profile with a license equals Salesforce platform. You won't be able to sign this profile with license equals Salesforce on it. And you can't edit the license on the profile. So you have to create a new one. Same for permission sets. Just create a permission set as a copy of the permission sets they're using now, but assign it to Salesforce platform license. And then edit your user's license and profile. And like, can't underscore this enough. You can edit the existing user. You don't have to delete the user, deactivate the user, and create a new one. It's the exact same user record that you can edit to change from Salesforce to platform. And then if a couple months later you say, hey, actually, you know what, this person's role is changing and they do now need access to leads, you can edit that same user again and switch it back to enterprise or whatever license it is that makes the most sense. And again, I'm really focused on enterprise and platform, the exact same set of criteria, the exact same way of thinking, slightly different set of criteria is also true between partner and community, partner and customer licenses. and a couple of other more niche ones out there. A little shout out to Mike Rogan for the last tip here. This is also a little bit of a unique kind of project, and it's not something that people have conventions for testing yet, right? Like we all know how to build and test things in a sandbox and see what happens when you click the button. But testing user changes and the complexity that exists there is a little bit of a different animal. So of course, to build this and test it in your sandbox, but I can't recommend enough also deploying that user to production and have a beta user or 2 or 3 or 100 log in and actually spend a day working using that test user to go through their day in the life, to be so that when you do move their user and hundreds of other users or tens of other users over to a different license, you have 100, absolute 100% certain that it's going to work.
Oh, until that user is trying to do something and you didn't think of, and that scenario comes up, so. Yeah, didn't think it has.
Mike, you had some great examples of that, and it was like, I think downstream third-party apps that were relying on user permissions that we're not analyzing in Era, and that in the work that you've done before, you had no way of knowing. Nobody thought about, oh yeah, by the way, we need this access through this user because it's authenticated in this other third-party app. And
Yeah, you don't know it sometimes until it breaks.
Right.
Especially with.
Good old ask forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah. Why am I getting error?
Yeah, exactly. And so,
Fine.
yep.
Yeah.
So getting a test user set up and kind of doing a real live testing there, a little bit different than how you might test an automation, but definitely like an extra step that's really helpful here. But simple enough instructions, and not that you need that, but we will send the presentation around afterwards so you have it. Thank you guys so much for your attention, and Evan and Mike and Jabari for setting this up. And please don't hesitate to shoot me an email or connect me on LinkedIn, or if you want to go ahead and see the demo, that is a QR code to my Calendly, and I'd love to show it to you. So. What?
Just something I thought of from a previous job I was in, the notion of being able to, if I'm understanding correctly what Eric can do, being able to analyze I don't know if it's just what objects or what specific records a user is accessing, that there could be opportunity and space for you in like a HIPAA compliance world. Is that something you've already explored? 'Cause like a place I worked at before, there was a question of, as we were managing permissions and who can see what and trying to not overcomplicate things, it was this notion of like, well, only these people should see these particular records about these families, and if they're if they're not the case manager for that family, then they shouldn't be able to see the record. It's like,
Yep.
Is that real? Is that not real? Is that convention? Is that actually law? Is that whatever? And I could never come up with a way of saying, well, like, can we audit ever? Like, did user number 3 ever actually look at the Smith family's account record? I don't know. I have no idea.
Totally.
And so if that is something that Era can do, there might be some more opportunity there.
Yeah. So I took a very hard look at HIPAA throughout this process, and little dirty secret about Salesforce is it's not HIPAA compliant.
Yeah, no.
And it cannot be HIPAA compliant without a huge amount of work. If you really push a Salesforce Health Cloud account executive to on this point, they'll say, well, we're HIPAA ready, is the term that they use. And part of it is the license access records. Like HIPAA requires a record of who saw what record. And we do that too. We solved that box. We solved that. But there's a whole sort of funny dynamic around HIPAA as to who actually incurs liability. for a system not being compliant. It's not Salesforce.
Right, it's the organization.
But there's also no enforcement. So there's no like incentive for companies to actually make Salesforce HIPAA compliant.
But nonprofits are scared bejesus about
Yeah.
not being in compliance because their funders will get on them.
Yeah. But there's a lot more than just the data access. Like we do solve that and it gets you closer to HIPAA compliance, but it's a bigger problem than just.
It's hard to ever say, like,
Yeah.
oh, we are HIPAA compliant,
Yeah.
because it's just like,
Yeah.
it's a huge liability to say that you are, if you're
Yeah,
not necessarily,
Yeah.
because there's like 1,000 mind. like,
Exactly.
guidelines about it.
yeah,
I worked on compliance while I was at Salesforce as well, and there's also a lot of nuance. Like within the platform, depending on what the features are, because some features run on AWS and others have native platform capabilities. So if you introduce like data going to AWS, that opens up a can of worms around compliance and data residency and who has access, so. There's a lot of.
Yeah, but like, I would imagine something like being able to market yourself as like a record access auditing tool, like without ever having to say the word HIPAA.
totally. Yeah.
Could be another angle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's sort of one of the, there's so many. I think this product that we built has so many different value propositions. It's too many. Like, I think yes and no, because we have to market it and learn. Yeah, we were really good at developing things. We're learning how to market right now. And it's like an infinite list of things that you can do with this data, from workflow analysis to all sorts of other things. And the people that aren't familiar with what we're talking about, Era was built as an automated time tracking tool, and so it records how long every user spends on every record. And so it's kind of the offshoot of that led to us being like, oh wait, we have this incredible value data set on record access. And one of the really powerful conclusions we can draw from that, which is very specific and easy to communicate, is license auditing. It wasn't really the intent, right? And that's kind of what I was just explaining at the beginning. The intent was like analyzing your org setup and analyzing your workflow and ROI on change, in change process. So you understand what the cost of a process is, and then you make a big investment in retooling, and then you can see what the literal impact is on time on the back end. That was kind of, but those are like big, grand, complicated ideas, and it's still in there. But right now we're really trying to like be specific, and focus on this license audit thing. Yeah, Mike.
So, we talked about this, or it was Era a while ago, when we looked at it, so is it still doing all that other stuff now? This area is just more of a branding, marketing to that, and the stuff's still there, or is it other stuff that you-
So other stuff. We have another app called Timelog that you might be thinking about,
Okay.
which was a professional services, and you need to bill your hourly time. You click a button to start a timer, and you click a button to stop the timer, and it's distributed through a Chrome extension, and it shows up your mobile app and all these things, and all the data is stored in Salesforce. And so that exists. It's another app that you can go and buy on the app exchange. That is a distinct set of functionality than Era, which was built as this auto time tracking tool and is now a license auditing tool. So the other functionality that you might be alluding to which is how long does every user spend on every record? That's still in there. I don't know if it will be forever, but at the moment it is. Yeah, Jabari.
What's the pricing structure for Era?
Yeah.
Tiers based off of number of user licenses?
Yep. So this is a really hard question. And right now we're doing completely custom pricing for each customer. And this is super early days. So we're kind of trying to just get it out there and develop a user base and prove the value. One of the reasons it's really complicated is because the audit that it does, the evaluation that it does, you don't have to run that every single day. You need the app in your org to accumulate the user data access for an extended period of time. But once you have that data, or I guess excluding that data, the analysis that occurs on the metadata and your license assignments you don't have, it kind of just need to run it, right? Like once you run it, your org probably doesn't change every day. And once you run it, you know that this is this is what your software is. And this is, which users are eligible for downgrading based on add-on compatibility. And so we're thinking about a lot of different ways to structure this. Currently on the App Exchange, it says $9 per user per month. But one of the big value features in here is this, like you click a button and it does this big analysis of your org. And we're thinking about pricing per time you run that, just because like you might only need to run that like once a year or once a quarter so basically right now what we're doing is like talking to prospective customers, understanding what the value is to them, and then figuring out a pricing structure that makes sense. It's listed at $9 per user per month to give you an order of magnitude of what we're aiming for, but we're trying to figure out what the best way is to price this, because the audit thing is a little bit different than most apps.
Well, I'm just thinking of the organization I work with, and maybe just offering an idea would, like, having part of the pricing model be or having it as a percentage of the amount saved be something that you all could do.
Yeah, I think we'd run into some contract issues there, because your contract pricing is technically like you're not supposed to share that with anybody else. So you'd have to share, like your customer would have to share, or like our customers would have to share their pricing with us, like their contract terms, which I think would be a violation of their Salesforce contract. So as much as I would love to do that,
Yeah.
I don't know if we can.
Because like, yeah, to your point, like once you run it, you have the data.
Yeah, totally.
But
No,
you can save someone
$100,000.
$100,000.
We thought about like saying, hey, it's free until you go through your contract renewal, and then we get some percentage of your reduction. But it's also, there's so many moving pieces, right? You might be like, your company could be smaller, it could be larger. I'm sure there's a way to benchmark it and come up with a formula. But I think the barrier there is I don't know that it's. I think that our customers would be violating their contract with Salesforce by sharing their pricing with us. And I'm sure there's a way to do it without tripping that fuse, but I don't know. I think it'd be a great way to do it. Like, hey, you install it, and then if you realize value, pay us for it. Right? That'd be cool. But I don't know if it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you. Mike, were you gonna add to that, or?
Well, I was gonna comment, but I mean, how do you? It's more of a broad question. I feel like your name's gonna be on a bullseye in Salesforce Tower somewhere. That's exactly.
I hope so. That means that we're doing it. We've succeeded, right?
Right.
Put you up the average.
Right. Sort of feels like to me like how, like casinos will stop players who
Yeah.
playing.
If I get on Salesforce radar, then we've already kind of accomplished our mission, right? Like, and we're already adding value to our customers. We're adding value to Salesforce's customers, and so it's hard for me to imagine that. Hey, we've gotten this, we've established real traction. We've got a meaningful customer base, and then Salesforce comes in and shuts us down and like takes that away from their customers. And all we're doing is creating transparency in your utilization of Salesforce and contrasting with their license rules, which are extremely opaque and spread across hundreds and hundreds of technical documents. But yeah, and so
Yeah. In all seriousness, I was thinking you could have less issue with Salesforce, the entity, because I think that, I mean, they're so big, no matter what you end up doing, it's not really gonna affect them that much, really. But I'm just thinking of AAs that I've worked with, being consulting, I've ended up working with dozens of them, and some of them are very much like, we want to help our customers get the right things. Others are a little less, we want our customers to spend the most money.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. It'd be a great problem to have
Yeah.
if like we've created that level, if we've gotten to that level, but also like, there's we don't need to sell through AEs. And we're not planning on it, because I don't expect a lot of introductions through AEs, because And then, maybe there's some AEs out there who are trying to sell Agentforce licenses and trying to figure out ways to reallocate their customer spend. Or optimize their customer spend so that their customers can buy more Agentforce.
I
So
think you would sell consultants, right? Like you're like independent consultants who are coming into like an org that's a mess.
totally.
And saying, like, one of the things I can offer you is this tool that I use that I'll put that.
Absolutely.
That's all your users.
Yeah.
That's,
Mhm.
because this,
Yeah.
doing it manually is hard.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot more conversations around who's using what or not. And yeah, there's just.
That actually might
It's
even
like-
be
it's
another
just
pricing
like-
model, like if you sold to somebody like Mike, who's got all these customers, and
Yeah.
said like, Mike, you pay, to Era, and you can then use it on your
Right,
customers.
yeah.
The customer then doesn't have to worry about, oh my god, another add-on, another license, another something, I'm so like sort of nervous about buying yet another thing, but like,
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
You pass the cost along in whatever way, but
Yeah.
it can go through the consultant.
Whenever I do a
100%.
health check for a new client, license audit is top of the list.
Yeah.
It's where you can add a ton of value quickly.
Mhm.
And I think the interesting thing about your comment on that, Mike, when we talked about this previously, is that it's not something they're asking you for, but that it's something that you suggest and everybody's excited about. And which I think tells me a lot that like isn't something people are thinking about, but it's a real problem, right? And so yeah, absolutely. I'd love to partner with consulting firms and anybody who does consulting and figure out how this can be an additional value that you add to your customers. I'm sure there's easy ways to do that, and we can take care of all the hard manual work of collecting this information and analyzing it, and then you do the fun stuff and say, hey, check it out, you can save a boatload of money, and you're the face of bringing that value to your customers. So
Yeah, I think that would be great. No, man, most of my clients are small. They don't have that many licenses. They don't have that many diversity of usage. I think this is better for situations like the aquariums. I think we've got hundreds of users. But I think that would be, but I would
yeah,
definitely totally see a service that we would provide something like that as a way. Let's come in and let's figure out how to cut your renewal.
yeah, exactly, absolutely.
A lot of times, what I hear from clients too is just like, I have no idea where to look. Like we've been using Salesforce for quite a while. We've worked with like different consultants and like, we had no idea, like, we needed to look at this, like, this kind of the complexity and like, I'm overwhelmed and like,
Right.
there's so much that we have now, not knowing where to go to find answers. So I get it. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of complexity and
Yeah.
especially with
And this is why you should really schedule a demo.
different licensing
Yeah.
models and now moving into consumption-based pricing with things like Agentforce.
Yep.
That's another dimension. What are your thoughts on that in terms of? Like, one thing that I'll hear is like, my AE is pushing Agentforce and these credits, and I'm scared now because I don't know what my bill's gonna look like. What are your thoughts around helping proactively manage that consumption-based spend?
I haven't thought about it. Yeah, I haven't. That's a great question.
That's definitely, that's a
Yeah.
gap. I mean, for sure, it's like
Sure.
there's a gap
Totally.
around like, how do I wrap my head around this?
Yep.
So that I don't get a surprise bill.
Totally.
Use like, even if it's just like, it's a legitimate mistake, right? Like, there's code that just like something happens and it makes too many calls.
Yep.
And
Totally.
then you're like, why did I get this like $100,000 bill next month?
Yeah.
So it's like, think about what kind of
I love it. Yeah.
safeguards could be put in place to block
Yeah.
that
Totally.
activity from even happening. I know like AWS, like it's the same kind of thing there. I have some customers that are using AWS and like, they can literally block it
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, no, don't allow this to happen, right?
Yep.
If Salesforce had that capability,
Yeah.
that'd be huge to help mitigate that risk.
Totally. That's a really good question. I had not thought about it at all, but I love it. And be really interesting to figure out how to block it. I feel like notifying you like, hey, by the way, here's what's happening. You're hitting this number,
Yeah.
whatever your trigger number is, or whatever the criteria is, like, I feel like that would be easy. It'd be interesting to figure out how to actually shut it down.
Yeah, 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 it's like you just accept threat.
Yeah.
Like if it exceeds this,
But-
don't allow.
Totally, but it'd be so valuable. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. It's gonna keep me up tonight. Um, yeah. What else? Any other questions or thoughts?
Anybody else have a question online? Awfully quiet there, Peggy and Dodie. Dodie's coming on.
Still here, but don't have any questions.
Okay,
It's very interesting.
thank you.
Yeah, just I guess one. Yeah, go ahead.
What's the most complex order have you guys been able to tackle? Cause it seems like you were saying, with integration to certain requirements for, users that need to use these requirements, you guys can't really take away those licenses. Or transfer it.
Complexity in terms of like data architecture within the org. It doesn't really matter how complicated it is inside of Salesforce. The data, there's kind of like there's this there's user data access question, and we primarily solve that through component you stick in Lightning pages. And then there's the metadata that stores all the other information. It's just kind of already there for you. And so for that, we're just querying it and analyzing it and kind of summarizing it for you. So it doesn't really matter how complicated the org is internally. I think there's a gap when you look at an org with a whole bunch of with integrations, because we're not looking at that. We're not auditing however external apps are utilizing Salesforce. Is that yeah?
Question I was curious about.
Yeah, sure.
How do you come up with the name Era?
Yeah, for sure. So Era, so it started out as automated time tracking. And yeah, so the data that this tool was generating was tons and tons of little time snippets. So it's like, hey, you spent a little bit of time here, a little bit of time here, a little bit of time. And I kind of like the idea of like calling those eras. So the object is literally era, and they are eras, and they're your eras. And it's kind of like, we all, I think of how we spend our time during the day is often trivial or insignificant. And it's like, well, what if we like called them something that gave them a little more weight and said, hey, you know what, like your day and you're important, how you spend your time, your work is important, because that's kind of what we're capturing in your document. It's falling apart a little bit with the license audit. Didn't really translate there, but that was the.
No, it's a great name. I was just
Thank
curious.
you. Yeah, appreciate it. Cool. Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate the questions.